Which coaches are the closest to being fired in 2026? We'll take a look at the coaches that are on the hottest seats going into the 2026 college football season. And then we'll take a complete opposite look. We'll look at the top 5 head coaches in the sport going into the 2026 season. And then stick around to the very end because we will take a program spotlight and put it on the declining Clemson Tigers. Very interesting stuff to take a look out there for the Clemson Tigers. But before we get into it, I got to make sure I ask you guys to go down and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment on what you enjoyed. Tell me your thoughts on who the top coaches in the sport are. Give me your thoughts on that. And if you don't like the show, if you don't want to subscribe, then go down and leave a comment and tell me what I can do better for the next episode. And then we can come back and see how much better I improve next week. But let's get right into the episode, okay? My top 5 head coaches on the hot seat going into 2026. My number 5 coach is going to be Lincoln Riley. Okay, his seat isn't super hot, right? He won 9 games last season. They went 9-4 there at USC. A pretty solid season, but before that, it was getting a little rough. They can turn that heat right back up, okay? Look, Lincoln Riley, whenever he got hired, he had a really good season. They had 11 wins there with Caleb Williams, a really good season. But since then, 8-5, got even worse to 7-6, but then they went 9-4 last year. So they have gotten a lot worse, and then they got better last year. So really tough to tell where USC is going. But I think the biggest difference wasn't their defense last year. Their defense was improved a lot, but they lost D'Anton Lynn. That's going to be tough to replace. But the biggest reason why I believe that Lincoln Riley is at number 5 and it is hotter going into 2026 is because of that run game last year. They were extremely good on the ground last year in 2025. They turned around that offense a lot. Look, you know Lincoln Riley's offenses. He's known for the quarterbacks. He's known for the really good wide receivers. You look at Caleb Williams. You look at Baker Mayfield. Players like that. Really good quarterbacks. And they have one in Jade Mayava. But the most important thing from last year was how well they ran the ball, okay? They were better at running the football than they were at throwing the football, and that's one of the only times that you've been able to say that about a Lincoln Riley offense before. So that was extremely impressive, and I think it's a huge indication that that program is turning around and becoming something really special. The defense, we just talked about it, got a lot better in 2025 as well. D'Anton Lynn did a really good job there. He did leave for Penn State, but they brought in Gary Patterson. I think he's going to be really good there for that defense. And I think USC is really turning around that team and that program. The culture's turned around. I remember a few years ago, they didn't have enough players to even practice in spring at times, but they got it turned around. They have enough players now. Their defense is a lot improved, and I think that program is really turning around. I think Lincoln Riley has a lot of expectations going into next year. I think the expectations for them should be to at least compete for a college football playoff spot. I think if they go 10-2 next year, even 9-3 again, I think will be just okay. I think they can do better than that. I think they'll be on the precipice of making the college football playoff just like they were last year. Can they make that jump and get into the playoff? I think they have the team to do it. I think they have the coaching to do it. Can they execute to the level of a college football playoff team? We'll see. But I think Lincoln Riley has a lot of good things going on there. But like I said, it can turn up just like it was 2 years ago. People calling for his job. Say if he goes 7-6 again, if he has only 8 wins, I think the stove gets turned up going into 2027. But if he gets like 6 wins or less, he's done. I think he's done there at USC. It's been long enough. He's had enough time. If you win 6 games there upcoming, if you completely fall on your face with all the talent returning next year, then yeah, I think Lincoln Riley will deserve it to get fired. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's a lot of stuff going on there. But the reason why he is on this list is because he can get turned right back up on that USC team. So we'll see. We'll see how Lincoln Riley does going into 2026. But a lot to be nervous about, but a lot to look forward to as well for USC fans. Now the other USC, Shane Beamer is going to be my number 4 coach on the hot seat. Okay, 9-4 in 2024, a really good season, almost made the playoffs if they didn't have a few bad losses there, but they followed it up with a 4-9 season with all that talent returning. Look, you brought back Dylan Stewart, Lenora Sellers, and Nick Harbor. All 3 of those players are going to be really good NFL players. You brought back all 3 of them, and you go 4-9. That's not good enough. That's on coaching, okay? You have to be better than that. You have the talent there. You have to be able to put it together and win more football games than 4 wins. I know you play in the SEC, one of the best conferences in the country. Not going to say it's the best anymore. It is certainly a top 2 conference in the country. I understand that. But 4 wins with that kind of talent is completely unacceptable. 4 wins is around the level of Mississippi State. That's not good enough there at USC. South Carolina I'm talking about, not USC, Southern California. South Carolina needs to do a much better job with the talent that they have. Again, it's completely on the coaching whenever you have talent the way that they do and you still don't win games. So lots of stuff to be nervous about there for USC going into 2026. But we'll see how they do going forward. Again, there's a lot to like. There's a lot of talent there. They just haven't put the necessary talent and the necessary coaching around that talent to get them to the next level and to make a college football playoff. But a team that isn't going to go to the college football playoff next year, now we're getting to the coaches that are like, yeah, it's red hot, okay? Luke Fickell. He came in and he wanted to do a complete overhaul of how that offense worked, do a complete overhaul of how that system worked, complete culture revamp. Really, really interesting decisions there whenever he first got the job. But it didn't work, okay? He went 7-6 in his first year, and then he's only gotten worse since then. 5-7 the year after, and 4-8 last year in 2025. Just not a good few seasons there for the Wisconsin Badgers. You know, Wisconsin was one of those teams that just ran the ball constantly, kind of like Michigan, didn't want to throw the ball. Luke Fickell wanted to change that, and it just didn't work, okay? I think they're going back to what it was there, and I think they're going back to what makes Wisconsin a good football program with getting Abu Sama from Iowa State. He was a really good running back there at Iowa State last year, but I think they need to completely go back to what Wisconsin used to be. Running the ball, tough defense, physical offensive line, smash it down people's throats, do a really good job in the front 7, do a really good job with the front offensive line. That's how Wisconsin has won games in the past, and they need to get back to doing that. They've completely lost their identity under Luke Fickell. Now, I will give Luke Fickell a little bit of grace because even the athletic director there has admitted that they didn't fund the program well enough whenever Luke Fickell got the job, right? They did shoot up to the 15th ranked portal class according to On3 this year. They're doing a lot better of a job funding that team and getting the right players. Like I said, Abu Sama from Iowa State, he's a 4-star prospect out of the transfer portal. He was really good last year, and he's going to be really good at Wisconsin. That's the kind of player that you have to be able to afford. That's the kind of player that you have to be able to pay to win football games in this new NIL age of college football. Not being able to get players like that and not funding the team is what leads to going 5-7 and 4-8 the past couple of years. Wisconsin is a better program than that. Luke Fickell is a better coach than that. He's the only coach to ever take a group of 5 team to the 4-team playoff. That's an incredible job there in Cincinnati. He's a really good football coach. He's going to make it work somewhere. Just not sure if it's going to be at Wisconsin because, 7-6, 5-7, 4-8, that's just not good enough. But if they can fund that program and get some money into that football program, then I think that they're going to do a much better job. And I think that they're going to improve, and you will see improvements off of a 4-8 season in 2025 in 2026. So, again, kind of like Lincoln Riley just doesn't have the results as Lincoln Riley does. He's going to get better, I think he'll get off the hot seat this year, but again, it can fail at any moment like that, okay? Those guys, I'm super worried about. Luke Fickell, we'll see. We'll see about him. I think that they can improve it a little bit, but we'll see going into 2026, okay? And then number 2, these last 2, I don't see a way that they make it out of these this season. Number 2 is going to be Dave Aranda from Baylor. Okay, look, he did win the Big 12 in 2021, and I think that's why he still has his job currently. But he's followed it up, and he hasn't won more than 8 games, okay? 6-7 in 2022, and then 3-9 in 2023. He's on the hot seat going into 2024, but then he makes it a little bit better, okay? They went 8-5 in 2024, but then they fall back down to earth in 5-7 in 2025. So Dave Aranda, he's in a spot where he has to take a big swing. He has to go out and get a really good transfer portal quarterback. And talk about a big swing, okay? They land one of the best quarterbacks in the transfer portal with DJ Lagway. He's going to be really good. One of those players that can make or break a season. Last year at Florida, he broke the season. I'm pretty sure he was injured quite a bit. If he wasn't, then he's just a really bad quarterback. You still saw flashes from time to time last year, but he has to show more of those if Dave Aranda wants to keep his job. Look, I love Dave Aranda. I think he does a really good job there at Baylor. I think he works with what he has there in a really good way. Like I said, he won the Big 12. When was the last time you saw Baylor competing for Big 12 titles? You just don't see that. Dave Aranda took them and won the Big 12 within inches of losing that Big 12 championship game, but ended up pulling it out over Oklahoma State. An incredible game, if you guys remember that. But oh my gosh, I cannot talk enough about how good of a game that was in 2021 between Oklahoma State and Baylor. That's besides the point, because it has fallen off since then. I don't see a way Dave Aranda keeps his job after 2026. I just don't see DJ Lagway really turning it around with overall worse coaching there at Baylor. So we'll see how it goes. But again, not a lot of confidence in Dave Aranda coming out of 2026. And then the hottest seat in the country, if you haven't guessed it by now, it's got to be Mike Norvell there at Florida State. Look, there's reasons to believe that they're going to get it turned around, but not very many, okay? Again, undefeated in 2023. They won the ACC. Don't know how they didn't make the playoffs. An insane decision by the College Football Playoff Committee. But since then, it has just gone downhill. Okay, 2-10 in 2024. We all know it. We all know how bad that season was. DJ Uiagalelei really fall flat on his face. Not a good season whatsoever. No positives coming out of that. Last year in 2025, there's at least one positive. You did beat Alabama, who was a college football playoff team, but 5-7 in 2025. Not a good record. Didn't even make a bowl game. That kind of stuff is how you get fired if you're Mike Norvell. If Florida State had the money last year, they would have fired Mike Norvell. If Florida State would have landed Lane Kiffin, then I think that they would have fired Mike Norvell, but they didn't have either of those two things. So Mike Norvell gets to keep his job going into 2026 with one last year to try and turn it around, but I just don't see the talent being able to do that there in Tallahassee, Florida. I just don't see a way that Mike Norvell really turns this around. Like I just said, they don't have the talent there. The quarterback play wasn't great last year. Tommy Castellanos wasn't the best, but they do have to replace him going into next year, and that's going to be tough to do. He was really kind of solid last year. He can make a few plays. He made a lot of big plays, didn't make the right plays all the time, but it's just going to be tough, right? They have to replace so much already, and they did bring in the running back from Texas. He's going to be really good, but I just don't see a way that Florida State can get it turned around. I don't see how Mike Norvell is going to be able to keep his job next year. I just don't see it happening. We'll see. We'll see. Like I said, there are some reasons to believe. I talked about it a few weeks ago in the Florida State program spotlight, but this is Mike Norvell's Captain Smith moment, okay? I compared it a lot to the Titanic. You can see it's going down. You can see the Titanic is sinking. And yet the captain, he didn't leave. He didn't run away. Didn't get on one of the lifeboats. He could have. He didn't. He put his hands full on the wheel, gripped it tight, said, I'm going down with the ship, and he sank and went down with the Titanic. That's how I see Mike Norvell in 2026, right? You lose your offensive coordinator. Gus Malzahn ends up retiring, and so Mike Norvell is now going to be calling plays for 2026 again, and I think that this is his putting his hands full grip on the wheel, and if he goes down, he goes down. It's going to be on him no matter what, and he has no one else to blame but himself. I think that's how Mike Norvell wants it, though. He doesn't want to be having the opportunity to blame other people, right? He wants it fully to be on himself, and if it's his fault, then it's his fault, and he goes down with the ship in 2026. But we'll see. Don't think he's going to be able to get it turned around. I think he gets fired this year, but not out of the realm of possibilities will he be able to turn around and win a few games and keep his job going into 2027. We will see for the Florida State Seminoles for 2026. Now let's get a little bit more positive, okay? We were just talking about the coaches that are probably going to get fired. Well, let's talk about the coaches that are dead set at their jobs, okay? The top 5 coaches in college football. Number 5 is going to be Dan Lanning. Look, they haven't had less than 10 wins since he took over in 2022. They've done a really good job recruiting there. They are the poster boy for the modern day college football program. They use their money in a really good way. They get a lot of high school talent into that program. You look at DeCorian Moore, you look at a lot of players on that team, and they're homegrown guys. But then they supplement with that Phil Knight money and get from the transfer portal as well. You look at Dylan Raiola this year. You look at Dante Moore the year before. They've done a really good job of getting not just the good players, not just the best players, but getting the right players in there at Eugene, Oregon. And I think they're doing a really good job in doing that. They don't just pay money to the top transfer portal guys, get them in there, and then they try and play with those. No, they do a really good job of building that foundation from high school players and then supplementing from the transfer portal as well to improve your team where it needs to be improved. Now, the only problem with Dan Lanning, yes, they have struggled in the postseason, okay? They lost to Washington a few years back. and then they got crushed by Ohio State a year ago, and then they get crushed by Indiana this year. But what they won't pay attention to in the national media is that he has gotten better every single year. They lost in the conference championship to Washington 2 years ago. Last year, you make it to the college football quarterfinals. Then the year after, you make it to the semifinals. So maybe, just maybe, that means that this upcoming year he's going to lose in the national championship. If history tells us anything, that's how it's going to be, and it's going to be linear. Well, we know that progress is never linear. So we'll see how it goes next year in 2026. I think he's going to do a really good job. He's done a really good job since he got there. That's why he's in my top 5 coaching list. It's just, can he take the next step that maybe the top guys on this list have done? He just needs to get there. He just needs to take that next step. They're really close. Just be able to translate the regular season success to postseason success. And I'm really excited to see what Oregon does going forward in the future. Now, my number 4 coach is very similar to Dan Lanning, okay? Marcus Freeman is going to be my number 4 coach in the country. Hasn't had less than 9 wins since he took over in 2022. Took Notre Dame to their first national championship appearance since 2012. That was insane, okay? Whenever Brian Kelly was there, you thought that they were kind of hitting their head against the ceiling, right? They couldn't get any much better than that because of different things around that program. You can talk about academics. You can talk about a whole bunch of different things there at Notre Dame that hinder your ability as a college football coach there. But Marcus Freeman is completely knocked out of the park. Look, he had 10 wins last year. He had 10 wins to end the season. They are currently on a 10-game win streak, and he has already took them to a college football national championship game, so he has shown that he can do it in the biggest moments in the playoffs and go toe-to-toe with some of the best coaches. He beat Kirby Smart. You know how rarely we see Kirby Smart get out-coached? Almost never. He got out-coached by Marcus Freeman in that semifinal in 2024. Marcus Freeman outcoached him. Do you guys remember that play where I think Notre Dame faked coming off the field or something like that? I'm not sure exactly what happened, but they got Georgia to jump off sides on a 4th down. Georgia wasn't prepared. Notre Dame called a great play. They moved the 6. They end up going to score a touchdown on that drive, and it really helps them go to win that football game. Marcus Freeman outcoached Kirby Smart in that game, and that is something that you don't see very often. So Marcus Freeman recruits really well. I believe that they have a top 5 class in the 2026 class. He's done a really good job. They have 2 5-star freshmen. We have talked about them all offseason. So if you watch this show, you know that they got 2 5-stars from Ohio State. They are doing a really good job in the transfer portal, high school recruiting, and on the field. I am really excited about what Marcus Freeman's going to do in the future, and he's still super young. Tons of room to grow in the future. Marcus Freeman is a top 5 coach in college football right now. Now getting to the top 3, now the only 3 head coaches to win a national championship that are active right now. My number 3 head coach is going to be Ryan Day. Okay, look, I know I have a Michigan shirt on right now. I know that he could probably be a little bit higher. It's just that he hasn't really beaten a good Michigan team in a while. I think last year Michigan was vastly overrated. I don't think they were really anywhere close. They were probably around a top 25 team. Top 15 was a pretty big stretch there for the Michigan Wolverines. I don't think they were really all that good. So he hasn't quite beaten a really good Michigan team, but he did beat Michigan, which is a huge accomplishment for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And again, you can completely take these top 3 coaches and put them in any order, and I'm not going to argue with you. If you have Ryan Day as your number 1 head coach in the country, I don't really have much of an argument for you. His consistency has been really good. They haven't had more than 2 losses in a season since he got there. Ryan Day's consistency there at Ohio State has been unseen before at Ohio State in their past. Doesn't lose against bad teams, will only lose to good teams. He has a national championship under his belt. He's done a really good job there at Ohio State. Had a Michigan problem there for a little bit, but I think he exercises those demons last year. We'll see how it goes going forward. You know, Michigan is bringing in a really good coach, Kyle Whittingham, and I think that Michigan's going to be able to turn around. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but I think Ohio State's probably going to beat him next year. It's at home. If you don't beat him at home next year, then yeah, we're talking about that problem being back for Ryan Day. But for now, he is my top 3 head coach. Okay, he's won a national championship. He's done an insane job. I'm not going to say anything bad about Ryan Day. Look, I know he's a little bit low. Maybe he can be a bit ahead of my next 2. But I think Ryan Day is one of the best head coaches in the country. I'm not going to argue with you if you have Ryan Day as your number 1 head coach. Really nothing to say on that matter if you do have him there. But I just think he can get a little bit better in the biggest moments, in the biggest games. You know, losing to Miami, I think you're supposed to win that game. You have a lot more talent than them. I think that they should have won that game. They didn't. I believe that they were around a touchdown favorite in that game, and they lost. So that's a big question mark if he can win in the biggest moments. But again, he does have a national championship, so he did that one season. Can he continue to do that? Can he make that continue going forward in the future? Not sure, because he didn't do it last year in 2025. But again, if you do this list a year ago, he's number 2 at least. He's probably number 1 if you do this a year ago. But my top 2 guys I think are just a little bit better, but not by much. My number 2 coach in college football is going to be Kirby Smart. Look, he has the 2021 and 22 national championships, the only coach to have more than one national championship in the country, haven't had less than 11 wins since his first year at Georgia. Kirby Smart is easily one of the best coaches in the country. He does a really good job with that culture. Look, we all know about the racing incidents there. A lot of speeding tickets, a lot of players being arrested. But I don't think that's completely on Kirby Smart, right? Sometimes you just can't get rid of something no matter how much you try. I think he's at the point where maybe he needs to just start sitting people, start suspending players. I'm not really sure what he needs to do to get that turned around, but I think people look at it as a bad thing that happens. I look at it as a good thing that he can have that happen and still consistently win football games. He's won the past 2 SEC championships with really teams that aren't all that good, with teams that really could be a lot better, right? They're nowhere near as good as those 2021 and 2022 teams. It's going to be hard for any program to get teams as good as those teams with NIL, with the transfer portal now. It's going to be hard to get teams as good as those 2021 and 2022 teams, but the teams that he's had the past 2 years have not been really close to a top team in the country, but they've done a really good job coaching, done a really good job with the players that they do have, and making them still be one of the best teams in the country. Not the best players, not the most talent, but one of the best teams, one of the best collection of players in the country, winning 2 SEC championships without having the best team in the SEC. It's a huge indicator of what a good coach Kirby Smart is, and he's only going to get better going forward. Now, my number 1 coach in the country is going to be Curt Cignetti, okay? He has the 2025 national championship, and you can say, you know, he hasn't been as good as Ryan Day or Kirby Smart whenever you compare those teams. I look at it as no other coach would be able to do what he did in Indiana. No other coach would ever be able to do that. This to me is like whenever you would ask the question, what if you put Nick Saban at Purdue? Would they win a national championship? That's how I see Curt Cignetti at Indiana. If you put Nick Saban at Indiana, would they win a national championship? That's how I see Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Look, that turnaround that they've had, you'll never see anything like it ever again in almost any sports. I can almost guarantee that there will be no team that is as bad as they were. Look, coming into this past season when they won the national championship, they had the most losses in college football history. The most losses. They've been the historically worst team in college football history. They jumped ahead of Purdue, their arch rival. Now Purdue is the most losses in college football history, and they won the 2025 national championship. That is something that I never thought I would see at Indiana, and it's a huge testament as to how good of a coach Curt Cignetti is and how good of a coaching evaluator he is. He has brought in some of the best coaches in the country. The offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator are both really, really, really good there in Indiana. Bloomington has a lot of good stuff going on there in that football program. They're more of a football school now than a basketball school anymore. So, great stuff there from Curt Cignetti, and I cannot wait to see what he does going forward for that Indiana program. I think he's the best coach in the country. If I'm drafting coaches and I get my first pick, if I'm creating a new college football team and I get to pick any coach in the country, my first pick is going to be Curt Cignetti every single time, and I really, really cannot wait to see what Curt Cignetti does for Indiana going forward into 2026 and beyond. Now, last but not least, let's get into this episode's program spotlight, and we're going to be getting a little negative. Last week we had Virginia Tech, and it was more positive. You know, we're getting better there at Virginia Tech. Clemson, complete opposite. 2016 and 2018, they won the national championship. 2 and 3 years, super impressive. 2018, they go 15-0, undefeated season. 2019, 14-1, really close to an undefeated season. 10-2 in 2020. 10-3 in 2021. Okay. 11-3 2022. Not bad. 11-3 in 2022. Not bad. 9-4 in 2023. Okay, it's getting a little bit worse. 10-4 in 2024. They win a college football playoff game. They're doing really good. We're going into 2026, and they have a really, really good roster. They are ranked in the top 5 in their preseason polls. You got Cade Klubnik coming back for another year. They got Blake Miller, Avion Terrell, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, and Antonio Williams. Really good players, all going to get drafted in the upcoming 2026 draft. Ton of talent there. Dabo Swinney's one of the best coaches in the country. They got a ton of momentum going into 2025. They're going to have a great season. And then they go 7-6. 7-6 in 2025. Not great from the Clemson Tigers. Just completely going off the rails from the very beginning. An LSU team that really ended up not being any good. They fired Brian Kelly. Lost to them in the first game of the season. And we thought, okay, LSU is a good team. That's not a bad loss. You can still come back from that. Well, LSU ended up not being any good. Clemson ended up being even worse. It's dark times for the Clemson Tigers. Okay, my good friend Saturday's Best Sports, he's probably not going to like this segment, but it's going to be really tough going forward for Clemson. They have to replace Cade Klubnik, who is a multi-year starter there at Clemson. That's going to be tough to replace. I know he's a quarterback that didn't have great things going on there at Clemson, but he did have some solid things going on there, but it's going to be really tough to replace him. Not only are they replacing him, they have to replace all those guys I just listed: Avion Terrell, Blake Miller, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, and Antonio Williams, all going to be drafted in the upcoming NFL draft. Really tough to replace them. They have the 31st ranked transfer portal class, which is the best they've had in a long time. They're actually using the transfer portal. They got London Merritt from Colorado, a former 5-star. He's going to be pretty decent, I think. They did lose a few guys that committed to Clemson and then went to Ole Miss. Not going to name any names, but you know who I'm talking about there. They have done a pretty decent job in the transfer portal. Could be a little bit better, but at least they're using it, right? They're going to supplement players from the transfer portal to get them a little bit better. They don't have to use it constantly. They don't have to build their foundation of the team off of that transfer portal, but at least they're using it, right? They're becoming more modern, and that's a huge plus for Dabo Swinney. They do have a really good wide receiver room going into 2026. You look at Bryant Westcoat and TJ Moore, both over 500 yards last year. They are doing a really good job. I think it's really weird that whenever they were, close to being really good there in the early 2020s, they were just missing the wide receivers. Now, they have wide receivers, and they don't have anything else. That's a huge issue for Clemson going into 2026. So I'm not sure how they're going to do. I don't have a lot of confidence in them going into 2026. I just see a declining program that hasn't gotten with the new age of college football, doesn't use NIL very well, doesn't use the transfer portal very well. I don't see a program that is ascending. I see a program that is descending. You look at the future, right? Clearly heading downhill. 21st recruiting class in 2026, 23rd in 2025. Just not great there. They used to be recruiting top 10 consistently every single year, challenging for top 5 classes. A few of those classes don't work out, and now they've completely fallen off the map in terms of recruiting. They're not terrible. They're just around probably a Big 12 level of recruiting. They could be a lot better than what they are right now. They have been a lot better in the past. So I think that Clemson just needs to do a better job of using NIL, getting to the point where they're improving their team every year instead of losing players from their team every year. Last year was the year to be good. Last year was the year to really turn around that program, and then they completely fell down on their face. I don't see a lot of positives there for Clemson going forward, but if you want some bright positive news, at least you have Dabo Swinney, who is a 2-time college football national champion. I do just realize that I forgot to mention him earlier in my coaching segment whenever I said that Kirby Smart was the only active head coach with multiple national championships. That's not true. Dabo Swinney does have it. It was just, 10 years ago. So we'll see going forward. I'm not sure how I see Clemson. I don't see them in a positive light. I know that. I very much see a descending program instead of an ascending program. But again, you do have a national championship winning head coach. So there's a lot of things that could go right there. A coach who knows what he's doing. Maybe now that the pressure to win national championships is off of him and the pressure is just to win more than 7 games, maybe that ends up helping him to get back to the national relevance that they once had. But not sure how I see Clemson going forward. It's just definitely not positive. Okay, that's going to do it for the show this week. Kind of ending on a negative note, which I don't really like, but we had a great show, a lot of good stuff to talk about, a lot of good coaching stuff to talk about. I know it's one of the most popular talking points in the offseason is the head coaches and who's the best, who's the worst, who's going to get fired, who could win another national championship, who might win a national championship that hasn't won a national championship before. That's a lot of good questions to ask in the end of March going into April. So a lot of fun, really fun episode. I hope you guys are enjoying this college basketball tournament. I know I am. My Michigan Wolverines just punched their ticket to the Final Four a couple hours ago. Duke and UConn is on my TV right now. Ton of fun watching college basketball. I'm really having a ton of fun. I hope you guys are as well. And again, I can't thank you guys enough for watching this episode. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.